The air on the Galactic Council Station Harmony of Species always smelled faintly of ozone and something else. Something sweet that Lee So-min could never name. It was a clean smell, a peaceful smell. It suited the massive, quiet halls where different beings glided or scuttled or floated to their meetings. So-min walked on 2 feet, as she always had, her simple gray liaison's robes whispering against the polished floor. Her office was small, with a large window looking out at the nebula the station orbited. Pinks and purples swirled in the gas cloud. It was beautiful. On her desk sat a data slate, glowing with the day's agenda. The main topic was, again, the Clothy. Their empire was pushing at the edges of council space, testing borders. The discussion would be about diplomacy, about sanctions, about sending envoys. So-min prepared her notes. Her role was to speak for humanity. She had done this for 10 years. The Human Unity Sphere was a respected member of the council. They were known for their doctors, their astronomers, their philosophers. They had joined the galactic community with open hands, sharing technology for clean energy and medicine. They were, by the council's quiet agreement, the gentle ones, the talkers. It was a role So-min believed in with all her heart. The chime at her door sounded. It was her aide, a young man named Choi-min. His face was serious. "Liaison So-min," he said. "Counselor Grox has asked for a preliminary word before the session. He is in the Hall of Reflection." So-min nodded. Grox was a Tarnaxian. His species looked like they were carved from stone, with thick gray skin and 4 powerful arms. They were the council's primary peacekeepers, a warrior species who valued strength. Grox respected So-min, but it was a respectful kind of pity. "I will go," she said. The Hall of Reflection was a quiet place with a pool of water from 100 different worlds. Grox stood by the edge, not looking at his reflection. He turned as she approached. His voice was a low rumble, like rocks grinding together. "Lee So-min." "Good. We must speak of today." "Of course, Counselor," So-min said, bowing slightly. "The Clothy probes grow more bold," Grox said, getting straight to the point. "My people have lost 3 patrol ships, not in battle but to accidents in disputed zones. The Council will talk of sending more envoys, more letters of protest." He shifted, his heavy body blocking the light from a nearby crystal. "The Tarnaxian delegation will be asking for more practical contributions to collective security." So-min felt the familiar tension. The Unity Sphere provides significant logistical and medical support to all peacekeeping missions. "Our sensor technology helps us see the threats," Grox interrupted, not unkindly. "It does little to stop them. Your people are brilliant, Liaison. But the galaxy is not always a place for brilliant thoughts. Sometimes it is a place for a strong shield, or a sharp sword." He looked at her, his dark eyes unblinking. "Your species has neither. The Clothy know this. They laugh at it." So-min kept her face calm. "Strength has many forms, Counselor. Ours is in preventing conflict, not winning it. We will argue for more time, for more dialogue." Grox made a sound, a deep huff. "Dialogue? Yes. We shall see." He turned to leave, then paused. "Just be ready. The mood is shifting. Not everyone sees patience as a virtue." The main council chamber was a vast circle. So-min took her seat at the human podium. Representatives from a dozen species filled the room. There were the insectoid Clickcate, the floating gasbag beings of Alara, the mammalian Borley. The discussion began as she expected. Reports of Clothy movements, economic assessments, calls for calm. Then Grox took the floor. He laid out the losses, the clear pattern of aggression. "We must respond in a language the Clothy understand," he boomed. "We must show a united front of force, not just words." The Borley representative, a soft-furred elder, shook her head. "Force leads to more force. We must be smarter." The debate went back and forth. So-min spoke when called upon. She outlined new mediation protocols the Unity Sphere had developed. She offered to host a summit. Her words were logical, peaceful, and perfectly in line with the human image the galaxy held. As she finished, a small, spindly alien at the back of the room, a merchant named Vec, buzzed for attention. He was not a council member, but he had been granted a hearing to share market data. He looked frightened, his large eyes blinking rapidly. "Esteemed council," Vec chirped, his voice amplified. I must share something else. I have just come from the Cygnus Fringe. I saw a ship." A murmur of impatience went through the chamber. Grok sighed. "Merchant Vec, we are discussing matters of security, not trade routes." "This is security," Vec insisted. He fumbled with a data projector. A shaky image flickered above the chamber floor. It showed a starfield. Then, something huge blotted out the stars. It was dark, angular, and covered in what looked like metal mountains. A single massive weapon barrel, glowing with a dull red light, was visible near its front. "It attacked nothing," Vec said, his voice trembling. "It just appeared from a crack in space that bled red light. It is bigger than a city. It is a weapon." I felt it scan. It felt cold. The chamber was quiet for a moment. Then a clickate diplomat clicked its mandibles. "A clothy secret weapon? It is crude, but large." "That is no clothy design," rumbled Grox, leaning forward. "Their ships are organic, curved. This is all harsh angles. It is a monster of metal." All eyes turned to Somin. The Borley representative spoke softly. "Liaison Somin? Could this be a human vessel? From some undisclosed Unity Sphere defense program?" Somin stared at the grainy image. Her heart was pounding. It was utterly foreign. It looked ancient and incredibly advanced at the same time, and it radiated a sense of pure, silent threat that made her skin crawl. It was the opposite of everything her people stood for. She stood, her voice clear but firm in the silent room. "That," she said, pointing at the monstrous silhouette, "is not ours. The Unity Sphere has no ships of war. We have no designs like that. We do not even have a defense program, in the way you mean." She looked around, meeting the eyes of the confused and worried ambassadors. "I have never seen that symbol in my life." The symbol, barely visible on the hull, was not the gentle spiral of the Unity Sphere. It was something else, sharp, aggressive, and alien. But the shape of the beings on the bridge, when the image zoomed and pixelated, was unmistakably humanoid. Bipedal, 2 arms, a head. A deep, heavy silence filled the Galactic Council chamber. The peace Somin had worked for her entire life felt suddenly very thin, and the sweet, clean air smelled like the moment before a storm. Commander Graal of the clothy battlefleet Claw of Dominion felt a thrill of predatory joy. His ship, a living vessel of hardened chitin and bioluminescent energy nodes, pulsed around him. Ahead, on the main viewer, floated the small, rocky world designated CX-992. It was rich in the minerals his empire needed to feed its war machines. More importantly, it was just inside the soft, undefined border of the so-called Galactic Council. "Status," Graal hissed, his voice a wet click in the ship's moist air. "The system is silent, Commander," his sensor officer replied. "No council patrols, no defenses, only the automated mining drones of the Borley. They are already fleeing." Graal let out a low, satisfied rumble. This was how it should be. The council was a talking shop, full of weak species who hid behind rules. They had no true strength, especially not the humans. The memory of the human liaison, Lee Somin, pleading for calm in the council broadcasts made him sneer. Her species was the perfect symbol of the council's failure. Intelligent but soft, advanced but harmless. They were prey psychology in a civilized skin. "Move the fleet to orbital positions," Graal commanded. "Deploy the spore colonizers to the planet. Let us plant our flag here before the council finishes writing their letter of complaint." The clothy fleet, a collection of 12 living ships that looked like sleek, vicious sea creatures, glided forward. They moved with the quiet confidence of apex predators. This was not a battle. It was an acquisition. On the bridge of the Claw of Dominion, the mood was light. Officers chattered, already discussing the rewards for securing such a rich system. The main viewer showed the blue-green planet growing larger. Then space tore open. It was not the smooth, blue-white vortex of a council jump drive. This was a violent, jagged rip in reality itself, bleeding angry crimson light and flashes of black. The energy shockwave hit the clothy fleet like a physical blow, causing the organic ships to shudder and creak in protest. Alarms, shrill and biological, wailed across the bridge. "What is that?" Growl roared, grabbing hold of a living support rib to steady himself. From the wound in space it emerged. First came the tip, a colossal wedge of dark gray metal, scarred and pitted. Then more and more until the thing fully occupied their viewer. It blotted out the stars. Merchant Vec's description had been poor. This was not just a big ship. It was a mobile fortress, a forged mountain range. Its surface was a terrifying landscape of gun batteries, deep launch bays, and armor plating layered like the scales of some primordial beast. Along its side, in stark, white letters were markings. U.S. Mountain Breaker. A collective silence, colder than the void, fell on the clothy bridge. The playful confidence was gone, replaced by a primal, instinctive dread. This thing did not live. It was built. It was made for one purpose only. A communication channel hissed to life on a broad, common frequency. The voice was not a voice. It was a synthesized, flat text stream that appeared on their screens and was read aloud by their ship's computer in a dead monotone. The language was crude, direct, using basic council glyphs. "You are in designated human space. Withdraw or be removed." Growl stared. Human? This could not be human. This was a monster. It had to be a trick, a scare tactic from some unknown species. His pride flared, burning away the fear. He was a clothy commander. He would not be intimidated by a block of metal and a text message. "Identify yourself properly." Growl spat into his comm. "This is clothy sovereign territory. You are the intruder. Power down your weapons and submit to inspection, or be destroyed." There was a pause. No response. The monstrous ship simply hung there, its silence more threatening than any roar. Growl's blood ran hot with insult. He turned to his weapons officer. "They think to frighten us with size. Target that vessel. All forward energy lances. Fire a warning shot across its bow. Let us see if its captain has real nerve." The officer hesitated for a fraction of a second, looking at the sheer scale of the mountain breaker. Then he obeyed. Firing. Brilliant lances of green bioplasma streaked across the void. They were not aimed to hit. They were meant to pass close, a show of force and precision. They never reached their intended path. From the dark surface of the human ship, 1,000 points of light ignited simultaneously. A storm of defensive fire, so fast and dense it looked like solid walls of light, erupted from the Titan. The clothy energy lances were intercepted and vaporized in a blink, before they had even gotten halfway. The point defense network left after images on the viewers, a glowing sphere of utter invulnerability around the colossal ship. Growl felt his second heart's pound. This was not a technology he understood. It was absolute. On the bridge of the UES Mountain Breaker, the mood was calm. Commander Park Ji-hun watched the enemy fire disappear on his tactical screen. He took a slow sip of tea from a simple ceramic cup. The bridge around him was quiet, lit by soft amber light and the glow of status reports. Crew members, men and women with names like Kim Tae-won and Kang Jae, worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. "Commander," his tactical officer, Kang Tae-won, said, "the clothy fleet is powering all weapons. They are moving to attack formation." Park Ji-hun placed his cup down. He had hoped it would not come to this, but he was not surprised. The galaxy, in his experience, rarely responded to polite words, only understood actions. He looked at the main viewer, at the fleet of living ships arranging themselves like a pack of wolves before a bear. "They have chosen removed," he said, his voice quiet but clear in the stillness. "Minimal force. Shatter their lead ship. Let the others carry the lesson." Tae-won nodded. "Aye, sir. Primary spinal battery charged. Solution locked." Park Ji-hun gave a single, small nod. "Do it." Outside, the very front of the mountain breaker began to glow. A deep, resonant hum traveled through the ship's frame, a sound felt in the bones. The glow intensified, focusing into a single, impossible point of light at the tip of the massive prow weapon. For a second, it shone like a captive star. Then it released, a lance of pure, white plasma, so bright it bleached the color from space. Lanced out. It did not travel. It simply was, connecting the Titan's prow to the claw of dominion for a single, timeless moment. There was no explosion in the conventional sense. The clothy flagship did not break apart. Came apart. Its organic matter, its chitin, its crew, its very atomic structure, underwent instantaneous, total disintegration. 1 second it was there, a proud living warship. The next, it was an expanding, silent cloud of incandescent gas and microscopic particles. A brief and tragic nebula that glowed fiercely before fading to dark. The silence on the clothy fleet's channels was total. The silence on the Galactic Council's monitoring post, which had been watching, was total. On the mountain breaker, Park Ji-hun watched the glowing cloud dissipate. "Broadcast the boundary coordinates again," he instructed. "And add this: transgressors will not receive a second warning. Then hold position. Let them think about what just happened." The ship turned, its engines silent but causing the distant stars to warp and shimmer from gravitational distortion. It moved to a point high above the planet, becoming a new, dark moon in the system's sky. A moon that watched and waited. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber did not last. It shattered into 100 different noises. Shouts of alarm, frantic clicks, rumbles of anger. The high-pitched were of translating machines pushed to their limits. On the main viewer, the tactical feed from the distant monitoring post replayed the event. It showed the terrifying ship, the clothy warning shots vanishing in a storm of light, and then the single, awful beam that erased the claw of dominion from existence. Lee So-min stood frozen at her podium. The grainy image from Merchant Vec had been bad. This was crystal clear. This was undeniable. Her stomach twisted. The sheer, overwhelming violence of it was something her culture had worked for generations to move beyond. To see it executed with such cold, surgical precision by a ship bearing human markings was a physical blow. Counselor Grox was the first to find his voice. The Tarnaxian slammed a heavy fist on his console, the sound a deafening crack that cut through the chaos. "Silence!" he roared. The chamber quieted to a shocked murmur. He turned, his stony face a mask of fury and confusion, and pointed a thick finger directly at So-min. "You, explain this." So-min opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She saw the same question on every face in the room. Betrayal, fear, accusation. The Borley representative, her soft fur puffed out in distress, spoke gently. "Liaison So-min, the markings, the shape of the beings on their bridge, what we can see. They are humanoid. The translation protocol used common roots from your language. Is this a secret? A division in your people?" "No," So-min whispered, then found her strength. "No. I swear to you on everything we hold sacred, the human unity sphere has no knowledge of this vessel. We have no technology for weapons of that scale. We have no military caste. We disbanded our war fleet centuries ago when we joined the Council." Her mind raced, trying to find a logical anchor in this nightmare. It must be a false flag. Another species using a human form to provoke a war. Grox gestured at the screen, where the mountain breaker now sat, a dark sentinel over the planet. "That is no illusion. That is material. That is power. You expect us to believe that another species, for some unknown reason, built a 30-kilometer warship in the exact image of your species, just to trick us? The energy signature of that weapon? It matches advanced human fusion principles, but magnified beyond any scale we have ever seen." Merchant Vec, huddled in his seat, squeaked. I told you it was a metal moon." It did not feel like the clothy. Felt old, and patient, and very, very angry. So-min had no answer. The evidence was a wall she could not break through. The council was crumbling before her eyes. The trust her people had built over decades was evaporating in the heat of that single plasma beam. A new data stream arrived, marked with the identifier of the mountain breaker. It was text only, repeating its first message with added data. The council computers displayed it. You are in designated human space. Withdraw or be removed. Boundary coordinates attached. Trespassers will not receive a second warning. Terran Sol Federation. The words hung in the air. Terran Sol Federation. Somin read them again, her blood turning cold. Terra. Sol. Ancient, almost mythical names for Earth and its sun. Names from humanity's deep past before the unity. Names her people used in historical context, not political ones. Terran, she said aloud, her voice hollow. Sol. Grox picked up on her shock. What does this mean? Is this another name for your unity sphere? No, Somin said, the pieces clicking into a terrible, impossible picture. It is not. Terra and Sol are our oldest names for our homeworld and its star. We are the human unity sphere. This Federation. It is something else. The implications crashed over the room. 2 human nations? The idea was foreign to the council. Most species unified as one world government before reaching the stars. The concept of a separate, hidden human polity was unthinkable. One group of humans gives us doctors and poets. A clickbait diplomat clicked angrily. And another gives us that. It gestured a delicate limb at the warship on the screen. Somin, the Borley elder said, her voice filled with a new, deep worry. If this is true, then which of you speaks for humanity? Somin had no answer. The foundation of her life's work was gone. She was not the human liaison. She was the liaison for one group of humans, and the galaxy had just met the other. Grox stood to his full height, his warrior's mind shifting from accusation to assessment. The immediate threat was not the confused woman at the human podium. It was the battleship that had just annihilated a clothy fleet with the ease of someone swatting an insect. This changes everything, he rumbled. The clothy aggression is now a secondary concern. We have an unknown, hyper-militant human faction that has drawn a line in the stars. They have declared sovereignty with a particle beam. He looked around the chamber. We cannot talk to a text box. We cannot reason with a gun. We must make contact. Real contact. He turned his gaze back to Somin. The pity was gone, replaced by a grim practicality. You will be part of the contact team. You are the only human we know. You will help us speak to these Federation humans, and you will find out what in the name of the void is really going on. Somin could only nod, her mind still echoing with the silent flash that had ended a ship and her world's peaceful reputation in the same instant. The clean, sweet air of the chamber now tasted of ash and metal. The shuttle was called the Diplomat's Wing. It was a small, elegant craft, built by the Borley for peaceful missions. Its smooth, organic curves felt utterly out of place as it drifted toward the monstrous shape of the US mountain breaker. Inside, the mood was tense. Lee Somin sat strapped into her seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Next to her, Counselor Grox filled the space, his massive form making the cabin seem tiny. He wore no ceremonial robes now, only the functional, armored plates of a Tarnaxian peacekeeper. His 4 arms were folded, his face a mask of stoic readiness. A male warrior going to meet what he assumed would be male warriors. A Borley pilot, her fur flat with anxiety, guided the shuttle. We are being scanned, she announced, her voice soft. Very deep scans. They are looking at everything. Let them look, Grox grumbled. We have nothing to hide but peaceful intentions. Somin said nothing. Her mind was a storm. The facts were simple and terrifying. The Terran Sol Federation was real. The ship ahead was real. Everything her civilization believed was built on an incomplete truth. Who were these other humans? What had happened to make them build such a thing? The shuttle was directed not to a main hangar, but to a small, stark docking port on the ship's underside. As they connected with a solid thunk, the difference was immediate. The Diplomat's Wing was warm, with gentle lighting. The air that cycled into the shuttle from the Titan was cool, dry, and carried a faint, clean smell of metal and ozone. It was not hostile, but it was utterly impersonal. The inner door slid open with a sharp hydraulic hiss. Two figures waited for them. They were humans, dressed not in robes, but in form-fitting, dark gray uniforms with subtle armor plating at the shoulders and chest. They wore helmets with tinted visors, their faces hidden. They held no weapons in their hands, but the bulky devices on their hips were clearly not tools. "Follow," one of them said, the voice filtered and neutral through the helmet speaker. They turned and began walking without another word. The corridor was immense, high-ceilinged, and brutally functional. Conduits and pipes ran openly along the walls, painted in different colors for identification. Everything was bolted, welded, and reinforced. There were no decorations, no artworks, no attempts to make the place feel like anything other than a machine for war. The sound was a constant, deep hum felt in the bones, the sound of the ship's titanic power plants and engines. Grox walked beside Somin, his heavy steps echoing. He observed everything, his warrior's eyes noting the thickness of the bulkheads, the placement of security hatches. "This is a fortress," he said quietly, a note of reluctant respect in his rumble. "Every line is for strength. Every corner is for defense." They passed other crew members, men and women with short, practical hair and focused expressions. They glanced at the aliens with a brief, assessing look, then returned to their tasks. There was no fear, no great surprise. There was only a calm, professional acknowledgement. Somin tried to meet the eyes of a young woman carrying a data slate, hoping for some spark of shared humanity. The woman gave a slight, polite nod that was no different than the one she'd give a piece of equipment, and moved on. They were led onto a lift that moved not just up and down, but also forward, deep into the heart of the ship. After a silent minute, the doors opened onto the bridge. It was not what Somin expected. It was not a dark room full of shouting and flashing lights. It was calm and quiet, like the library of a monastery. The lights were low, amber, and indirect. A massive main viewer showed the starfield and the distant shape of the Galactic Council station, like a delicate toy. Consoles were arranged in terraced rows, each crew member, with names like Kim Tae-won and Kang Jae-e displayed on their stations, working with quiet efficiency. The air was still. At the center of the bridge, in a simple chair that was not a throne but a command post, sat Commander Park Ji-hun. He was an older man, his hair short and graying at the temples. His face was lined, not with anger, but with a kind of weary patience. He wore the same uniform as the others with a few simple insignia. He turned as they entered, his eyes passing over the hulking Grox and coming to rest on Somin. He stood. He was not exceptionally tall, but he carried a quiet authority that filled the space. He gave a small, formal nod. "Liaison Somin, Counselor Grox. I am Commander Park Ji-hun of the Terran Sol Federation vessel Mountain Breaker." His voice was calm. It was the voice of a man used to being heard, not one who needed to shout. Somin was struck by his ordinary appearance. This was not a raging conqueror. This was a man who looked like he could be a senior engineer or a history teacher. Grox stepped forward, his chest puffed out slightly, ready for the warrior-to-warrior dialogue he understood. "Commander, your vessel has destroyed a clothy flagship in Council-adjacent space. You have committed an act of war." Park Ji-hun listened, then his eyes shifted to Somin. "Is that how you see it, Liaison?" The question was direct. It forced her to speak. The violence was extreme," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, then stronger. "There were other ways. Sanctions, embargoes, mediation." "Were there?" Park asked, his head tilting slightly. The Clothy were in the process of annexing a sovereign system. They were deploying planetary colonization spores. They fired upon this vessel after a clear warning. In the experience of the Terran Sol Federation, beings who do such things do not respond to sanctions. They understand only one language: consequence. "Consequence," Grox cut in. "You speak like a judge and executioner. Who gave you this authority? Park Ji-hun looked at the Tarnaxian for a long moment. Authority is not given, counselor. It is demonstrated. The Clothy demonstrated their intent. We demonstrated our capability to stop it. Now, a boundary exists where there was none before. That is the reality. He turned and gestured to the main viewer. Your council's authority ends where its power to enforce its laws ends. Ours begins where our ability to protect our space begins. It is a simple, if uncomfortable, truth. So-min found her voice again, a spark of her diplomatic training igniting. But you claim this as human space. I am human. My people, the Unity Sphere, have no claim here. We have no knowledge of you. Who are you to speak for all of us? A faint, sad smile touched Park Ji-hun's lips. It was the first real emotion he had shown. We do not speak for you, liaison. Just as you, it seems, do not speak for us. He paused, letting the weight of that division settle in the quiet room. You asked who we are. That is a longer story. Would you care to hear it? The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of the ship. Commander Park Ji-hun did not return to his chair. Instead, he gestured toward a side area, a small observation platform with a clear view of the stars. It was not a plush meeting room, just a functional space with a few benches. He was offering conversation, not a formal negotiation. Lee So-min and Counselor Grox followed. Grox moved cautiously, his warrior's instincts assessing the room for threats. So-min moved like she was in a dream, her eyes fixed on Park's ordinary, tired face. You asked who we are, Park began, his hands clasped behind his back as he looked out at the nebula. Your people call your home Earth. We call ours Terra. It is the same planet, the same blue marble. So-min felt a chill. That's impossible. The Unity Sphere governs Earth. We have a unified world government. We have for centuries. Park nodded slowly. You do. And you left. Generations ago, a great movement began. A vision of a peaceful, unified humanity that would take to the stars without the scars of our old wars. They built beautiful ships like arcs. They left Terra, seeking a gentler path among the stars. They succeeded. They became the human Unity Sphere. He finally turned to look at her. We are the ones who stayed. Grox let out a low, confused rumble. You stayed? On the homeworld. Why? Because someone had to guard the door, Park said, his voice quiet but firm. While your ancestors looked to the heavens with hope, ours looked at the debris still in orbit, the ruins of old wars, the dormant weapons platforms, the data cores full of nightmares from our violent past. We saw what was left behind, and then we saw what came visiting. He paused, letting the words hang. A crew member, a young woman named Choi Min-ji, approached and offered small cups of water from a tray. It was a simple human gesture. So-min took one, her fingers cold against the plastic. What came visiting? So-min asked. The things that dwell in the dark between stars, Park said. There was no drama in his voice, only fact. Not civilized empires like your council. Scavengers, parasites, berserker probes from dead civilizations. A crystalline swarm that consumed organic matter for fuel. We called them the Devourers. They found Terra, not because they were looking for us, but because our planet was a bright signal of life in the quiet. Your Unity Sphere had already moved on to safer, quieter lanes. We were left alone to face them. He took a slow sip of water. We fought, with the old weapons at first. Then with new ones we built from desperation. We fought for every meter of ground, for every city, for every generation. We learned that the universe is not a safe place. We learned that peace is not a default state. It is a wall you must build and guard every single day. The Terran Soul Federation was forged in those fires. We did not expand. We fortified. We built walls. This ship, he said, gesturing to the metal around them, is one of those walls. So-min's mind reeled. Her people's history spoke of a peaceful departure, a voluntary disarming. They spoke of leaving war behind. They never spoke of leaving anyone to war. We never knew, she whispered, her heart aching. No signals, no messages? There were attempts early on, Park said. But the Unity Sphere's path diverged. Your comms protocols changed to more peaceful bands. You moved out of range of our crude, militarized signals. You built a society that looked forward. We built one that remembered, every day, what was at stake. He looked at Grox. You asked who gave us authority. Survival gave us authority. The duty to protect the cradle of humanity gave us authority. Grox had been listening intently, his initial anger replaced by a deep, focused attention. He understood duty. He understood guarding a border. You have been at war, in silence, for centuries? Not always at war, Park corrected, but always on watch. The Devourers were pushed back, eventually, but others came. Raiders, pirates who prey on the weak. The Clothy are not unique. They are just the latest to test a boundary. We have known of the Galactic Council for some time. We monitored your communications. We saw the Unity Sphere join you. His eyes returned to Somin. We saw our cousins become the gentle voice in your chamber. We were glad for them. Their path worked for them. But we knew it was not our path. We knew our first formal contact with the wider galaxy would not be with a handshake, but with a shield. Because that is who we are. Somin stared at him, seeing the history in the lines on his face. Her people were the children who left home to build a new, peaceful life in a new neighborhood. His were the older siblings who stayed behind to defend the family house from the gangs that moved into the old streets. They lived in the same city, but in different worlds. And the Clothy ship? Grox asked, his voice now devoid of accusation, seeking only tactical clarity. A demonstration, Park said, and for the first time, a flash of something hard showed in his eyes, not of cruelty but of scale, to show that the cost of testing us is absolute. To save lives, counselor, by making the consequence so clear that no one dares to provoke it. It is a sad logic, but a true one. We have oceans of blood in our history that prove it. He stepped closer to Somin. You represent the best of what humanity can be, curious, kind, trusting. We represent the part that remembers what we must sometimes do to protect that possibility. We are not your enemy, but we are not you. The galaxy must understand. Humanity has two faces. You have shown them one. Today they have seen the other. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of centuries of separate suffering and different choices. The simple, terrifying truth was now clear to the two visitors. The council had not been deceived. They had only ever met one half of the human family, and the other half had just arrived, with a wall of steel and a lesson written in fire. The observation deck felt smaller now, filled with the weight of Commander Park's story. Grox stood very still. His forearms no longer crossed in defiance but held loosely at his sides, a posture of reassessment. The enemy he had prepared to confront, a reckless, aggressive warlord, did not exist. Instead, he faced a commander who spoke of duty and defense with the weary conviction of a man who had seen too much. You have known about us, Grox stated, his voice a low rumble. You watched the council. You watched the Unity Sphere, yet you said nothing. You let a false image of humanity stand. Park Ji-hun met his gaze. Was it false? The Unity Sphere's achievements are real. Their peace is real. Their image is their truth. Our truth is different. Interrupting their story would not have helped them or you. It would only have caused fear and confusion. Until our security was directly challenged, there was no need for our paths to cross. And now, Somin asked, finding her voice. It was thick with emotion. She felt a grief for the history she never knew, and a rising fear for the future. Now that our paths have crossed with a particle beam, what happens? Do you join the council? Do you demand a seat? A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Park's lips again, but it held no humor. No liaison. We do not seek a seat at a table where the rules are written by those who have never had their home threatened. We do not want your politics. We have our own. He walked to a console on the wall and tapped a few keys. A holographic star map appeared, showing a swath of space. It was a wedge-shaped sector, bordering council territory and brushing against clothy space. It was not huge, but it was clearly defined in solid, red lines. "These are the sovereign borders of the Terran Sol Federation," Park said. "We are transmitting them to your council now. Within this space, our laws are absolute. We will not interfere outside it, unless directly threatened. We expect the same courtesy in return." Grox studied the map, his tactical mind working. "You are placing your border between the Clothy and 3 of their claimed resource systems. They are not claimed. They are contested. And now, they are adjacent to a power that does not contest. It enforces." Park's tone was final. "The Clothy will look for weaker targets. Their conflict with the Council is your affair. But they will not look toward us again. In that, perhaps, our presence provides a benefit you did not ask for." Somin stepped forward, looking at the hard red lines on the map. They were so definitive, so unyielding. "This is isolation. You're building a fortress around yourselves. After all this time, don't you want connection? Exchange? We have so much we could share. Medicine, art, science." Park's expression softened, but his resolve did not waver. "We have our own medicine born from battlefield trauma units. Our art is in the symmetry of a functioning engine and the stories of survival we tell our children. Our science is the science of protection and endurance. What you offer is beautiful, but what we have is necessary." He paused, looking at her with a directness that was not unkind. "Your way is not wrong, Somin, but neither is ours. The galaxy is big enough for both." He gestured for them to follow. "There is one more thing you should see before you return." He led them off the bridge, down another of the endless, stark corridors. They descended several decks in a lift, the hum of the ship growing deeper. Finally, they stepped out into a vast, cavernous space. Somin caught her breath. It was not a hangar or an armory. It was a hall. The ceiling soared up into darkness. The walls, which stretched further than she could see, were not made of metal. They were made of names. Endless, neat columns of names, etched into dark stone panels. Millions of them. Above each section were dates and simple designations. Battle of the Martian Rings. Siege of Luna. The Devourer War. The Silent Incursion. Small, simple lights dotted the floor, casting a soft, solemn glow upwards. "This is our memory," Park said, his voice hushed in the immense quiet. "Not just of soldiers, of civilians, engineers, teachers, children, the cost of our truth." He walked to a nearby panel, his fingers gently tracing a line of names. "You spoke of other ways, liaison. We have oceans of blood that asked for other ways. These are the ones who paid when there were none left." Grox stood motionless. As a warrior, he understood monuments to the fallen. But the scale here was beyond anything he could comprehend. His people had wars, but they were measured in thousands over millennia. This was the toll of a single species on a single planet, fighting for its right to simply continue existing. It was a history written in loss, not glory. Somin felt tears welling in her eyes, hot and sudden. The sheer, staggering volume of loss carved into the stone was a physical weight. This was what the Unity Sphere had left behind. Not just weapons, but the responsibility for an endless, silent war. The peaceful life of her people was built, in part, on the unawareness of this sacrifice. Park turned to face them. "Go back to your council. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them about the Federation. Tell them about the border. And tell them this: we are not a sword for them to wield. We are a wall they do not have to guard. We do not seek their friendship or their fear. We seek only our own quiet corner, secured." That is the message. The walk back to the shuttle was silent. The 2 armored escorts were waiting. The clean, cool air of the ship now felt charged with the echo of all those names. As the docking hatch of the diplomat's wing sealed behind them, Grox finally spoke, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "He is not a conqueror," he said, as much to himself as to Somin. "He is a custodian of a terrible duty." Somin nodded, unable to speak. She looked out the viewport as the shuttle detached. The UES Mountain Breaker hung against the stars, no longer just a monstrous weapon. It was a tombstone and a promise, forged from the same unforgiving steel. The galaxy's simple story about humanity was over. The complicated truth had just begun. The return to the Council Station felt like entering a different world. The clean, sweet air of the harmony of species now smelled sterile and false to Lee So-min. The graceful arches and soft lights seemed like a fragile dream after the grim, solid reality of the Titan. She walked beside Counselor Grox, their steps echoing in a private corridor leading to the main chamber. The usual quiet was gone, replaced by a tense, waiting silence. "They will be expecting answers," Grox rumbled, his voice quieter than before. "And I have them," So-min replied, though her confidence was a thin shell. "But they are not the answers anyone wanted." The doors to the main chamber slid open. Every representative was in their seat. The Borley elder's fur was flat with anxiety. The Clickcate diplomats were utterly still. All eyes were on So-min and Grox as they approached the central floor. The High Chancellor, a venerable Alaran who floated in a support field, spoke first. "Liaison So-min, Counselor Grox, report. What is the nature of the entity known as the Mountain Breaker?" Grox nodded to So-min, deferring to her as the human voice. She took a steadying breath. "The entity is a warship of the Terran Sol Federation," she began, her voice clear but carrying a new weight. "They are human, but they are not of the human unity sphere." A wave of confusion rippled through the chamber. So-min continued, laying out the story Commander Park had told. She spoke of the schism generations ago. One group seeking peace among the stars, the other staying to guard the home. She described the unseen wars against horrors like the Devourers, the centuries of silent vigilance. She did not soften the truth. She told them of the Hall of Names, of the millions of dead that were the foundation of the Federation's resolve. When she finished, the silence was absolute. The idea of a hidden, militant branch of humanity was a concept the Council's collective mind struggled to hold. The Borley elder spoke, her voice filled with sorrow. "So we have, all this time, only known the children who left home. And we have judged all of humanity by them." The Clickcate diplomat clicked sharply. "And now the ones who stayed have come forward with a warship that can erase a fleet with one shot. This is a catastrophic security failure. Our entire strategic model is broken." "It is not a failure." Grox's voice cut through the rising panic, loud and firm. He stepped forward. "It is a new reality. I have stood on that ship. I have spoken to its commander. He is not a conqueror. He is a soldier standing guard over a grave. His purpose is not expansion. It is definition." He activated the main viewer. The star map Park had shown them appeared, with the Federation's red-bordered wedge stark against the usual Council blues and greens. "They have transmitted their sovereign borders. They do not ask for a council seat. They do not ask for trade agreements or cultural exchange. They demand only that this space be respected." A Tarnaxian general, Grox's superior, spoke from the gallery. "And if it is not respected?" Grox met his gaze. "Then you have seen the consequence. It is absolute, immediate, and without negotiation. They have built a wall. They are telling us very clearly where it is. Only a fool would try to climb it." The chamber descended into a dozen separate debates. Some saw the Federation as a new, terrifying threat that needed to be contained. Others, particularly those bordering clothy space, saw a sudden, immovable barrier between them and their aggressors. The Unity Sphere's delegation looked lost, their identity shattered. So-min listened, the noise washing over her. She thought of Park Ji-hun's tired eyes. She thought of the endless names on the cold stone. The galaxy was scrambling to fit this new human faction into an old category, ally or enemy. But they fit neither. They were something else entirely. A sovereign, uninterested in the community, defined entirely by the will to protect what was theirs. Finally, the High Chancellor raised a tendril for silence. The Terran Sol Federation has changed the galactic balance. They have declared themselves not with diplomacy, but with a demonstrated power we cannot match. Our choice is not whether to accept them. They have already asserted their existence. Our choice is how we respond to a neighbor who does not wish to visit, but will defend their property with ultimate force. The Chancellor floated toward Somin. Liaison Somin, you are the only point of contact between our two human realities. You will act as the intermediary. You will convey the Council's acknowledgement of their borders. And you will maintain a channel of communication, not for friendship, but for clarity, to ensure there are no misunderstandings. Somin bowed her head. It was a lonely duty. She was no longer the representative of humanity, but a bridge between two halves of her own species that viewed each other with sadness and caution. On the bridge of the UES Mountain Breaker, Commander Park Ji-hun watched the Council station on the main viewer, a tiny jewel in the dark. His XO, Kim Ji, approached. The formal data packet has been received by the Council, sir, including the border coordinates and the incident report regarding the Clothy. Park nodded. Good. On a secondary screen, a feed showed the remnants of the Clothy fleet, now retreating at best speed away from the Federation border and back toward their own space. The message had been received. Was it worth it, sir? He asked quietly. The shock? The fear they must feel. Park watched the stars, thinking of the hall of names below his feet, of the long, silent vigil. They were living in a story where strength was a choice, and peace was a default setting, he said, his voice low. That is a beautiful story, but it is not a true one. Not for everyone. He turned from the viewer, his face calm in the amber light of the bridge. Now they finally understand. Not all of humanity asks please. Some of us simply state, this far and no further. He took his seat, the commander of a wall, not a spear. And now, he said, not with triumph, but with the grim satisfaction of a necessary task completed. They know we have the means to back it up. Outside, the Titan-class warship held its position. It did not move toward the Council. It did not threaten the Clothy. Simply was. A fact of metal and fire and will, a new line in the star charts, a truth that could no longer be ignored. The gentle dream of a unified, peaceful humanity was over. The complicated, dual reality had begun.